This egg in my hand is widely considered the gold standard of survival protein. It's dense, it's reliable, and it's a staple of every homestead in the world. But what if I told you there is a tiny bright green leaf that grows on the surface of stagnant water that contains twice the protein of this egg, pound for pound? Imagine a crop that requires zero soil, zero fertilizers, and doubles its entire biomass every 48 hours. In just 7 days, a single handful can turn into a thick, nutrient-dense carpet of food. It is quite literally the most efficient protein-producing machine on the planet. Yet if you try to scale this up, you'll find yourself hitting a wall of invasive species labels, strict zoning bans, and heavy-handed regulations. It is the ultimate solution to food sovereignty, a plant that allows you to step off the grid of industrial agriculture entirely. And that is exactly why every centralized system wants it gone. Welcome to Timeless Harvest. Today we're uncovering the truth about the forbidden superfood that could end world hunger, and why the powers that be are so desperate to keep it out of your garden. Before we dive into the biology of this plant, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. We're dedicated to preserving the skills and the crops that the modern world has forgotten, and you won't want to miss our upcoming guide on off-grid protein systems. To understand why this plant is such a threat to the status quo, you first have to understand the math. When we talk about high-quality protein, we usually talk about soy or beef. But soy requires massive amounts of land, pesticides, and fresh water. Beef takes years of resource-heavy upkeep. This aquatic plant, often known as duckweed or lemna, bypasses the entire industrial machine. It is roughly 40 to 45% protein by dry weight. To put that in perspective, that is nearly double the protein found in a steak and significantly higher than what you'll get from a soybean. But it's not just the quantity, it's the quality. Most plant proteins are incomplete, meaning they lack some of the essential amino acids your body needs to survive. This weed is different. It contains a complete amino acid profile, including high levels of lysine and methionine, which are usually the hardest to find in a plant-based diet. Because it lacks the heavy cellulose of land plants, your body can actually digest it more efficiently. You aren't just eating more protein, you're absorbing more of it. It's essentially a living multivitamin that creates itself out of thin air, sunlight, and a little bit of nitrogen in the water. When you look at the efficiency of this growth, the traditional agricultural model starts to look obsolete. On a single acre of water, you can produce 10 times the amount of protein that you could from an acre of soy. This isn't just a minor improvement, it's a total disruption of how we've been told we have to eat. If this plant is such a miracle, you have to ask yourself, why isn't it in every grocery store? Why aren't governments handing out starter kits to combat rising food prices? The answer lies in the label. In dozens of jurisdictions across the globe, this plant is classified as a noxious weed, or a prohibited invasive species. If you're caught transporting it or growing it in open ponds, you could face massive fines or even have your property forcibly treated with chemical herbicides. The official reasoning is always environmental protection. And to be fair, in the hands of the irresponsible, a plant that doubles in size every 2 days can choke out a local lake, blocking sunlight and oxygen for fish. But there is a massive difference between an unmanaged pond and a controlled closed-loop harvest system. Governments don't seem interested in making that distinction. Instead, they've created a regulatory minefield. In many regions, this plant is stuck in novel food limbo. Even though it has been eaten safely in Southeast Asia for thousands of years, the bureaucratic hurdles to get it approved for human consumption in the West are designed to cost millions of dollars, a price tag only the biggest corporations can afford. While they tie up the small farmer in red tape, the patenting process is already beginning. Large-scale biotech firms are quietly working to standardize and patent specific strains of these aquatic plants. They aren't trying to stop the plant, they're trying to stop you from owning it. The goal is to turn a free self-replicating resource into a licensed product. They want to ensure that if you want the miracle protein, you have to buy it from them, processed into a powder and sold in a plastic bag, rather than scooping it out of a tank in your own backyard for free. By labeling it a pest, they discourage the public from seeing it as a resource. It's a classic psychological play. If people think of it as pond scum or an environmental hazard, they won't realize they're walking past a gold mine of self-sufficiency. Control the food, and you control the people. But if the people can grow their own protein in a 7-day cycle, using nothing but a plastic tub and a little sunlight, that control begins to evaporate. To understand why this plant is being regulated into the shadows, you have to follow the money. We are currently living through a period of protein convergence. The world's largest seed, fertilizer, and meat processing giants are no longer just meat companies, they are protein companies. They are spending billions to consolidate control over every calorie that reaches your plate. And then, there's this weed. The global economy is built on a foundation of soy and corn. These two crops are the engine of industrial agriculture. They feed the cattle, the pigs, and the chickens that provide the world's protein. But soy and corn are centralized crops. They require massive acreage, expensive patented seeds, heavy machinery, and proprietary synthetic fertilizers. You cannot grow enough soy in your backyard to feed your family, let alone a flock of livestock. You are forced to remain a customer of the system. Duckweed shatters that entire business model. If a homesteader can take an IBC tote or a small backyard pond and produce a 40% protein harvest every single week, they have just achieved something the industry fears: input independence. You no longer need to buy bags of soy-based feed. You no longer need the nitrogen fertilizers that Big Ag sells you, because this plant can thrive on simple compost tea or even diluted animal waste. When you can grow your own soy replacement in 7 days using free sunlight and recycled water, you are no longer a customer. You are a competitor. In industrial trials, replacing just 25% of livestock feed with this aquatic plant didn't just maintain animal health, it often improved it, while slashing the farmer's costs by nearly a third. If that technology were to go mainstream and decentralized, the multi-billion-dollar feed industry would face an existential crisis. This is why we see a push for standardization. The industry's goal isn't to ban the plant forever. It's to ensure that when it does come to market, it's a proprietary lab-grown, sterilized version that you aren't allowed to propagate yourself. They want to take a timeless harvest that belongs to nature and turn it into a licensed technology. By keeping the raw wild plant labeled as a pest or a hazard, they buy themselves time to corner the market. They want you to believe that growing your own protein is dangerous, complicated, or illegal, so that eventually you'll be happy to buy it back from them in a branded box. If you are ready to reclaim your food independence, you must view the cultivation of this plant not merely as gardening, but as an act of decentralized engineering. Because this plant, specifically the Lemna or Wolffia species, is aquatic and exceptionally fast-growing, the methods to harvest it differ fundamentally from traditional soil-based agriculture. To successfully integrate this into a homestead or a survival plan, one must master 3 distinct phases: the environment, the nutrient cycle, and the purification process. The beauty of this system is its low barrier to entry. You do not need acres of land, you need surface area. A common mistake beginners make is trying to grow it in deep, expensive tanks. In reality, the plant only occupies the top inch of the water. Therefore, shallow vessels like repurposed IBC totes cut in half, old kiddie pools, or even simple wooden frames lined with pond liner are the most efficient. These micro ponds allow for easy temperature regulation and, more importantly, easy harvesting. Position these vessels in a location that receives at least 6 to 8 hours of sunlight, but be wary of extreme heat. If the water temperature exceeds 90 degrees Fahrenheit, the growth will stall. The second pillar is the nutrient cycle, which is where the true magic of the plant is revealed. This is a nitrogen-hungry organism. While industrial farms might use synthetic fertilizers, the timeless harvest method relies on the closed-loop philosophy. The most effective fuel for your protein farm is often what others consider waste. Diluted compost tea, made by soaking high-quality compost in water, or the effluent from an aquaponics fish tank, provides a perfect buffet of nitrates and minerals. If you are keeping chickens or rabbits, their waste can be processed into a liquid fertilizer that turns yesterday's manure into tomorrow's high-protein feed. The plant acts as a biological filter, scrubbing the water clean as it builds its own cellular protein. However, the most critical phase is the harvest and processing. Because this plant is a hyper-accumulator, it is incredibly good at absorbing whatever is in the water, including heavy metals or harmful bacteria if your source is contaminated. This is why you must never harvest from wild, stagnant city ponds. In your controlled home system, the harvest is simple. Use a fine mesh pool skimmer to remove about half of the surface mat every few days. This is the Goldilocks rule of aquatic farming. If you harvest too little, the plants crowd each other out and die. If you harvest too much, you break the reproductive momentum. Once harvested, the plant resembles a wet green paste. To make it palatable for human consumption or long-term storage, it must be thoroughly rinsed in clean, filtered water and then dehydrated. Drying the plant at low temperatures, around 110 degrees, preserves the delicate amino acids and enzymes. The result is a vibrant green powder that can be added to soups, breads, or smoothies. It has a mild, nutty flavor, similar to watercress or spinach. For livestock, it can be fed fresh, significantly reducing your reliance on commercial grain. By mastering this 7-day cycle, you effectively opt out of the industrial food chain, replacing a fragile global supply line with a resilient backyard protein engine that no regulation can truly extinguish. Standing at the edge of a small backyard pond or an IBC tote, you are looking at more than just a layer of green vegetation. You are looking at the ultimate insurance policy. We live in a world of just-in-time supply chains, where a single week of logistical failure can empty the shelves of every grocery store in the country. In that world, the ability to produce your own high-grade protein in a 7-day window isn't just a hobby, it's a radical act of self-reliance. The choice is yours. You can continue to rely on a fragile industrial machine that views you as a consumer, or you can look to the timeless wisdom of the natural world and become a producer. This weed represents a crack in the armor of the status quo, a way to feed your family, your livestock, and your community without asking for permission. It is time to stop trying to eradicate the solutions that nature has provided and start harvesting them. This is the path back to sovereignty. This is the timeless harvest. Thank you for watching this deep dive. Don't let this knowledge be suppressed. Share this video with someone who values their freedom, and make sure to leave a comment below. Tell me, is this plant legal in your state, or is it on the forbidden list? Your engagement helps us keep this channel alive. Keep growing, keep harvesting. I'll see you in the next one.